Welcome to the Future of Surrogacy, the podcast that explores the people, the innovations, and the ideas building the next generation of surrogacy.
Our guest today is Adrienne Black, current president of Seeds, owner of Heart to Hands Surrogacy, and a 4-time gestational surrogate herself. Anyone who knows Adrienne knows that she's built a reputation in this field for holding an exceptionally high ethical bar, and in a space as complex and human as surrogacy, that should be worn with a badge of honor. And small fun fact for our listeners, this is a first for us. Last year, we had the opportunity to speak with Jim Vandegrift, making this the first time we've had both halves of a husband and wife duo on the future of surrogacy. So in this conversation, we will cover what's ahead for Seeds in 2026, especially as the organization navigates a year of leadership transition, the real ethical tensions shaping surrogacy today, and what attendees can expect at this year's Seeds conference in Atlanta. So Adrienne, welcome to the Future of Surrogacy.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You have been on my top 3 list for about a year, as evidenced by my many emails inviting you to this podcast.
Sorry for making you wait so long.
Oh, that's okay. It just makes it sweeter when it happens. So with everything that has gone on this year in surrogacy, and especially relating to some of the negative press, I know it was time to transition to a new president at Seeds. And so the fact that you stepped into those giant shoes, I, number one, think is courageous. But 2, I'm under the impression, at least, that this is a significant transition year for Seeds in terms of how people are looking at Seeds. What should we be doing to combat the negative press? And so I know you had sent out an email, but I'm just curious if you could highlight what the immediate priorities were for you in this new role.
Sure. It's so interesting because being within Seeds for as long as I have, this looks like a continuation of everything that we have been working towards. It doesn't feel necessarily like a huge transition. And I think on a historical perspective, we're the 3rd officer team that exists. And so I was part of the previous officer team as well, where we had an opportunity to really do a lot of foundational work around what is Seeds, who do we want it to become, and where does that have to go? And so for people who don't know, Seeds leadership team includes a 7-person board of directors and then a 7-person officer team. And the officer team's job is to enact the vision of the board. And so last year, our team put in a ton of foundational work. And this year, the transition of president to the new president and the new officer team did just happen to collide with a bunch of drama in the surrogacy world. That's happenstance. So I'd love to say that I was shepherding in this massive vision, but really I am continuing the work that we have already been putting in. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we do have to respond to the drama that is really coming to light. And that is a major priority for us. There are a couple of priorities that we were working on before all of this drama was really brought to the front and center. And so those things are also happening. And I think the thing that is of the utmost important to Seeds leadership is completing the process of creating standards for all of the professionals who are a part of the surrogacy community. And so we already have a set of agency standards that have been in place. We voted in a set of escrow standards just a few months back. And by the end of this calendar year, we will have completed the standards for insurance professionals, mental health care providers, concierge services, clinics, attorneys. And then we will have the major stakeholder group representations for standards for our professionals. And so that is our primary focus, is completing those standards, getting them out to membership, and hopefully they'll be ready to vote in and we can say, yes, we have a complete set of standards for all professional members.
I think that's wonderful. I come from graphic design world, and so the AIGA was in charge of graphic design, and it would say things like, hey, you can't do comp work to win a project because small agencies wouldn't be able to compete with the large agencies that could do it. And so that was just a standard. And people, for the most part, stood by it because it's one of those things like would tear down the whole industry of graphic design. Individual freelance graphic designers they'd be just giving away all their work for free,
Mhm.
whereas large agencies could easily do it to win projects. And so it's one of those things like if we don't subscribe to a certain level of standards, behemoths, we would give them a huge competitive edge. But I'm just curious about your point of view on great that we have standards. How do we make sure people are meeting them?
Well, I think you've hit on 2 topics, and this really applies to people who are super into the dynamics of our industry. And the first is there is some disparity between very, very large entities and quite small entities, which you'll see in all of the different fields that are
Yeah.
involved in the ART community. And so I think it is important just to stop and acknowledge that of like setting standards for the range of people that we serve as membership is challenging, and trying to find a set of standards that brings up the level of care and service that we provide, but doesn't also harm the different components of membership is very challenging. And I think, unfortunately, there's going to be some adjustments that have to happen. I think in most areas of the standards, it is attainable. There are some where it is more challenging. The escrow standards, I think, are a prime example of this, where very small entities that have been holding funds are going to face enormous challenges meeting those standards.
Mhm.
And I think it's very fair for those entities to have some big feelings about these standards. And our industry has lagged behind for a long time in bringing up the expectations of how we act professionally. And so this is a tough transition period where we have to increase those expectations and standards overall. So I do just want to acknowledge like this is hard for some of these smaller businesses. I'm not a large business myself. I have some of those where I'm like, "Oh, that's a little bit of a struggle." And then once integrated, okay, like yes, that did bring up my professionalism, but I hear that it's hard for some people. Seeds has a mentorship and a support system in place for that. We're always happy to help. I'm never going to turn somebody away if they come and say, "How do I integrate this standard into my
Yeah.
practice?" So I think it is important both to acknowledge it, but also to say the goal is to raise the standard of professionalism. Right now, as we know, there is, except for New York State, no licensure available for surrogacy agencies, for concierge services. The associated other professions have their own licensure processes. But for those of us who don't have those in place already, there has to be something. And so this, for now, is what we can offer. And I think it is substantial because people who choose to be members of Seeds are saying we follow these ethical and business standards to do a good job. And so the goal here is we really want to bring as many people into the Seeds fold as members as we possibly can, because that's going to raise the entire level of professionalism for the whole industry.
Because Seeds is a volunteer-based association, there's no way to be auditing on a regular basis, and so are you planning to rely on the community to use the grievance process if they see somebody violating? Is that how we're gonna be maintaining standards?
It's twofold. First of all, I do want to just shout out a thank you to the volunteers. This organization is
Great.
entirely voluntarily run. As far as really how are we going to kind of enforce these standards, it is voluntary, right? This whole membership organization is voluntary. There's no
Yeah.
requirement that people participate. But the first is we want participation. So it will be about helping people to be successful in meeting those standards. We will ask that every member, when they apply, if they are new members, attest that they are following each of these standards. And then we will have regular attestations saying, yes, we are following that. We'll actually have one coming out very soon.
Right.
And at this point, we are not going in and verifying every component of it. We just don't have the processes
Right.
in place, the manpower. And quite frankly, that's a little bit of something we're still trying to evaluate because,
Yeah.
having somebody in the industry come in and audit your business feels a little like you're letting people in on state secrets or something. Like, I don't know, we have all kinds of there's big feels about having your
Totally.
competitors auditing your business.
Yeah.
And so we're still really looking at how do we do this in a way that works well. So I
Yeah.
imagine this is going to change over time as we get better at what we are doing. So we are evaluating options for a formal verification process. Honestly, I don't know what that's fully going to look like because what
Yeah.
we want is to make sure we are putting something forth that, first of all, uses our membership dollars well, since
Yeah.
everything we do is funded by membership, but also that is of value, right? We don't want to just create busy work for people to do. We also need to have a system in place that feels safe for members. So, yes, we are looking at that, but that's not for this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Are there conversations that we don't know about that are happening behind the scenes at Seeds that would be worth sharing here?
For immediate response, not necessarily. This year, one of the officer team's goals is to really come in and create that foundational structure that's been pieced together. As we grow, it becomes hard to maintain these patchwork processes. So we'll be looking at making sure that those foundational components are really well established. And part of that is hiring an operations manager. This is something
Mm.
that I'm very excited about. We will be hiring a full-time operations
Oh,
manager who will help really manage and facilitate the day-to-day and just kind of the nonprofit business functions of the
yeah,
organization.
great. Okay, well, you mentioned conferences, so that's a great segue into Seeds 2026 Atlanta is coming up. Was there a theme to this conference? Are there things that you are most excited about that's going to happen at this conference?
I'm very excited to be in Atlanta where we have quite a lot of surrogacy activity. So that's fantastic. We have an excellent keynote speaker who's coming this time.
He's a comedian.
Yes, I don't know lots and lots about this person. I have not gone online because I just want to enjoy that moment at the conference and really be, in the moment with everybody. And so this conference we're going to see a lot of member-driven topics. We're working also very hard to invite people who are not the common voice. We are getting new members and new points of view from other people. So I think you can expect to see that. You can also expect to see warm, friendly, welcoming humans who really want to say, it's so nice to see you. Thank you for being here. It's hard to be a professional. And that opportunity to be in a place where everybody shares the same passion and also understands the exhaustion and the trauma and the constant like trying to get ahead of whatever it is. So being in a room with people who really understand that at their core, and welcome you in and want to share that with you, that's something we really strive for at every single conference.
Yeah, this is just focus group of one, but I think if Seeds only did professional standards and community building, like those two things have such immense, giant value for everybody involved in surrogacy.
This is why I'm still here.
Yeah.
Seeds is the reason that I still run an agency and I'm still in the industry. I think I went to their third ever conference and I was just a tiny little baby agency and I had nobody. I had no friends in the industry. It was just me. And I was ready to quit. And I went to that conference and I was welcomed in such a warm, open way. I really
Yeah.
don't think I would still be running a business if it were not for seats.
Yeah. Same. We work kind of on, outside on the technology side. So I
Mhm.
think I think we were expecting to come up against a lot more friction than we felt when we first were showing up on the scene too.
That's a nice thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is.
Mhm.
I mean, what the thing that we see on a regular basis from agencies is just the amount that each particular agency owner or caseworker or intake coordinator is carrying with them. in addition to their lives, you know, it's nice to be able to look at somebody else and
Mhm.
be seen, be recognized.
I think it's
Oh,
also another piece of seeds that I think is really important that we often kind of underplay is it is the only multidisciplinary
yeah.
organization in our field, right? ASRM is so clinic based, there isn't the same capacity for agencies to really explore what we need to explore, but we also need that input from all of the different parties. And so SEEDS really provides that multidisciplinary aspect we don't get elsewhere.
That is such a great point. There needs to be some glue amongst the various
Mhm.
disciplines.
One of the things that's so exhausting to me is that we are pushed out of the way by ASRM. We are not, agencies are not acknowledged as a legitimate component of this
Mm,
profession. And
which is bonkers.
so, as an agency, we are literally the only entity that touches every single part
Yeah.
of the process. And so, it is so critical that we have that access to other professionals and that also they have that access to us
Mhm.
because they don't know what we're doing. And so I think this is an overlooked component for
Yeah.
sure.
And or how vital a role agencies play in these journeys.
Well, I mean, I can say 100 things about that. Carol Lieber Wilkins in the Surrogacy Professionals group had this great comment. It was in a conversation about whether an agency should call themselves an agency or
Mhm.
something else. And her flow of words was just so much an acknowledgement of like, you have to be an expert in literally every part of this process to do your job well.
Yeah. I wanna shift over to Adrienne, agency owner for a little bit. I mean, you know you have this reputation, right?
Here's the thing. Ethics are part of the fabric of who you are. And to be honest, I don't think a lot about them unless I'm confronted with something I have to consider. Because
Yeah.
to me, the baseline of ethics, this is when I started this process, this concept of ethics was not as popular as it is now.
Mhm.
And it was something that I don't think we put a lot of thought into. And I have a medical background. My original career was as a midwife. And so I was exposed to medical ethics and the process and what goes into that. And so for me, part of being an agency is protecting this industry and protecting the families that we build. And so ethics has to be a core component of literally everything we do. And so it is baked into the foundation of my agency. It's one of our keywords, but it's not enough to just use the word ethical. You actually have to know
Right.
what does that mean and how does
Right.
that apply to what we're
Right.
doing.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's just a word. But when we really distilled it down, the core essence is this safe? Is it
Mhm.
safe for the surrogate? Is it safe for the intended parents? Is it safe for the baby coming into the world? Is it safe for my employees? And safe for myself and the industry as a whole. And so when we look at it and really distill it down to a question of, is this safe? It makes this concept of ethics a much simpler and digestible concept in relation to what we do.
I agree. There are some people that especially when you talk to you get and I'm not laughing at this because it's not funny. I agree with you. Ethics should not be something that, it's kind of the equivalent of like greenwashing. Everybody started using the word, it's green. And I think ethics is one of those things too, because what I see now is surrogates and intended parents are cued into like, wait, this should be ethical. And so they're looking for agencies to also say they're ethical, but the lip service to the word ethical versus the in practice ethical can be two different things. And so we've talked to people, you're like, oh, this is giving me some ethically fluid vibes. Versus when I talk to you, it's platinum, titanium, diamond level ethics built into every fiber of her being. And so that's what I get, and when I mean, like and so I don't when I say, like, you have this reputation, right? I don't mean that at all negatively. And so if you zoom out and you think about what is needed and most in terms of ethics in surrogacy today, are there certain categories of thought that come to mind?
Like, I'm going to be honest with you.
Right.
No, because here's the thing what we are seeing in the news right now, this is not surrogacy gone wrong. These are bad people doing bad things. I've been in this industry for 25 years. It's not new. We're just
Right.
seeing it
Yeah.
more. And we have had some things that have been really traumatic that are new, and specifically the situations with escrow being stolen.
Right.
The agency bad behavior, there will always be bad agencies and bad people doing bad things and looking for ways to circumvent the systems we put in place to protect people.
Right.
But the other components that we're looking at, I don't know that those are ethics based issues, to be honest. I think they are people who are not well prepared to do their jobs. I've known most of the people in this community where things have gone badly, and I don't believe any of those people started out with a desire to steal somebody's money or to do harm. I think they got in over their head. I think they
Yeah.
weren't prepared with the educational foundation around business practices that they needed to have to run a sustainable business, because this shouldn't be a secret, but agencies and surrogacy businesses do not make a lot of money. These are fairly vulnerable businesses
Mhm.
without a lot of the typical business resources because of the type of business that we all are.
Right.
And there isn't a lot of education available on how to do this well. And so that is so risky. So, this is not about an ethical situation of people doing it badly. This is a resource and education problem in our community. And I think that's much easier to fix than an ethical problem in the
Yeah,
community.
that is, I mean, there's always gonna be bad actors in every industry, we all know that, but, yeah, it's very interesting to hear the perspective around these people didn't get into this to do harm, they got out over their skis and couldn't figure out how to rewind it. Well, I am curious then, and this one wasn't in our schedule, but if you think about surrogacy in 5 years, what would you anticipate us seeing more of in surrogacy or less of in surrogacy?
It's been such a fascinating transition in really the last 8 years. And so where it's going is like where we are now is not where I thought we'd be 8 years ago or 5 years ago.
How
And
so?
well, so we were on this kind of typical trajectory until, 2018, where we were like this quiet little corner of healthcare and associated professions, and everybody kind of overlooked us. And then we really started to get hit in 2016 with private equity noticing us
Mhm.
and coming in, starting with clinics. And then heading into 2018, we saw this huge ramp up where private equity was purchasing agencies, and that was making tumultuous water that we're all treading in because it's such a dramatic change to how we've all run businesses prior to. And when COVID happened, that changed the face of everything that we do. And so the adjustments there really created a situation where agencies had to reevaluate how they do business, how they communicate, what's in person, what's not, how do we pivot, right? There were all those pieces circling around. But at the same time, because of the shutdown, we also then saw private equity who got in over its head, couldn't recoup their expenses. They bailed. Clinics disappeared or they got gobbled up by other clinics. Agencies were still trying to recover from a shutdown. So, like the chaos that came out of a full private equity inflow and then almost an abrupt end to that, it has us in these few years figuring out, like, I think 2022, 23, we're like, okay, maybe private equity is not coming back the same way. And so nobody's selling their businesses really. And so I think the trajectory of where I thought we'd be is not where we're at. Where we will be in 5 years, gosh, I don't know.
Well, do you feel like there'll be more regulation?
I really genuinely don't know. And I think some of this is politics based, right? We're
Mhm.
seeing so many um, responsive legislation right now. And I suspect that when we have a different party in leadership, we'll see an entirely different lean towards legislation. But, I don't know what's going to happen in the next election.
I
And
don't either, but I tell
I
you
don't know.
what what scares me, and this is because I come from the world of adoption. When I built a business in adoption, I was of the mindset that any kind of regulation would be based on like what's the right thing to do. And that's where I was floored at how some regulations come to be. And you're like, whoa, sometimes it's the sound bite that was played again and again and again. And it can lead to the wrong types of regulations.
Well, I 100% believe that's going to happen. We're seeing it happen. I mean, I think Florida is a prime example. I think we'll continue to see more of this. I think the reversal of the Dobbs decision was such a huge impact on how we look at autonomy
Yeah.
in healthcare. So I 100% believe that we're going to have cascading legislation. That's a little different than regulation, right? The
Yeah.
legislation is not attacking surrogacy right now. It is attacking byproducts or things where we are the byproduct or
Right.
something along those lines. So I
Yeah.
don't see surrogacy itself being attacked at the moment. I see the tangential repercussions overall, with, a few exceptions like Florida, where that is an attack on
I
surrogacy,
don't
but
yeah.
very limited.
Okay, so none of us have a crystal ball. But yes, I think the regulation can be linked to the legislation or vice versa.
I don't anticipate regulation on a state by state level anytime soon. That is a massive undertaking. We can't even get everybody to update parentage in this capacity. So, adding in regulation requires so much work to make this happen and money, quite frankly, because if you have regulation, then somebody has to be checking it.
Yeah.
I went through a legislation change in the state of Oregon where they actually put midwives under the oversight category of people who did massage and did salons, etc. And
Yeah.
so that regulation process was a nightmare in the beginning because these were people who had no understanding of the
Yeah.
work that we did versus massage work or salon work. And so my concern and thought process about this is regulation is going to have to be something that we respond to. There's no scenario that I have ever seen when it comes to regulation where they come to the people who are actively involved in it and say, tell us what we need to know.
I
It is
know. Yes.
always the other way around.
Yeah, I would say actively insert ourselves in those conversations proactively because it's not, they're not going to be like community focus groups where they pull together. It's not going to happen. When it does happen, because I am of the mindset that it's inevitable, that it's one of those things that, ooh, how do we get in on those conversations right now to start shaping them? Because to make it not quote unquote easier, but more applicable to the work we actually do.
Well, and I think the thing that's scary about this is legislation wise, we aren't invited to the table and we often don't know
That's very scary.
until it's happening. There are legislation trackers, but it's not always really easy to discern what that includes. And so I fully anticipate that it'll be a after the fact and how do we respond? I'd like to be at the table, but
Yeah.
I just don't think that's realistic. We don't get the acknowledgement we need within our own industry, let alone being at the table with legislators. I'd love that. I'd love
Yeah.
to know how to get myself on the table. If you know, let me know.
I would love for you to be at that table. Hashtag Adrienne at the table. Yes.
Okay.
Let's jump into some rapid fire questions. Okay, these are rapid fire. What comes to mind? Should there be surrogate compensation caps?
No, I don't think anybody should be telling a surrogate what she can or cannot have for her base compensation and the benefits package. I think this is something that is complicated, but I am not in favor of caps.
Okay. Regulations in terms of licensing for agencies, for or opposed?
Can I be in the middle?
If you give some explanation.
Okay. I am for useful regulation and licensure. I am not for badly done that we have to clean up and fix regulation and licensure.
Fair. Paid ads, advertising, giant compensation package. Ethical or not?
This is my agency owner hat, not my seeds owner hat, because there is a seed standard about this. And honestly, I don't agree with the seed standard. I think that this is a legitimate recruiting component. We all know it. We all know this is part of what brings surrogates in, and hobbling our ability to talk about compensation as a piece means that the bad actors are receiving way more exposure than those of us who are doing this in a way that actually serves the community overall. That said, I think we do have to be mindful that this is a component of ethical surrogacy. And when the numbers become such that it's impossible to say no, there is a level of like, have we reached coercion? And hiding our head in the sand and ignoring those things is not of value. To be a country that upholds a standard of surrogacy, we have to constantly be looking at, are we approaching these things that can cause harm? And coercion absolutely has the potential to cause significant harm. So if that is if the advertisement is stating compensation that the surrogate is actually going to receive, not the if every bad thing that happens and you receive payments for that, but like what is the base compensation? If we're advertising a base compensation that surrogates are actually receiving at that agency, I think it's fine.
Fair. Okay, good. Mandatory background checks on IPs.
100%. Yes. Every single intended parent, I don't care where they live, they need to have a background check. International is just as critical, if not more so. And I'd like to give a story to illustrate why this
Sure.
absolutely must happen. Like many agencies, I occasionally work with concierge services where intended parents show us a profile. We share a surrogate's profile. We see if this is a match that we can help facilitate. We had a scenario many, many years ago where a concierge service gave us a set of intended parents for a potential surrogate match, and that service did not do background checks. We did background checks, nothing came up. We then did a social media check. This particular intended parent had a history of doing very bad things.
How come that wouldn't have shown up on a background check?
This was a Chinese intended parent. The process of doing background checks there, you actually have to have a skilled professional who has access to the government registries. And so if it's not done right, it's really hard to get that information. And at that time, we work with a private investigator now who has access. We didn't at that time. So I think we just didn't get full information. And so it's not just a background check being mandatory. It must also be a social media check that is done. We are not going to catch everything and everybody, but not even attempting to do so is just negligent.
Wow, that is scary. Okay, what is riskier for the category of surrogacy? Bad actors or overregulation?
They're bad in different ways. Bad actors are bad actors. They're always going to exist and they do a lot of harm, and then they become loud and people want to talk about it like it is the baseline. So that is bad in and of itself. Overregulation, though, comes in more insidious ways where we don't necessarily know how to do our jobs, or we are hampered from doing our jobs because of A, B, or C. So I think they're equally bad, just in different ways.
Okay, last one. Psychological screening. It should be a practice that everyone does in the same way.
Yes. We should all be having a surrogate meet with a skilled, licensed, prepared, and experienced mental health care provider who does a consultation with the surrogate and her spouse or partner. And then the surrogate does the MMPI or the PAI. And then there's an evaluation with a recommendation. I mean, 100% everybody should be doing that. It should be a proctored evaluation. It shouldn't be something she does on paper at home. It should be at least by Zoom. In person is even better when that's an option, although that's very rare post-COVID.
Well, I'm just curious if somebody knows about people that aren't doing it that way. Is that something that's a grievance that should be filed?
I don't know that we specify all of those details in the standard. I'd have to go back and look. If they're not following a standard, 100% somebody should file a grievance. There's no other way for us to know.
Right.
And when a grievance is filed, share the documentation, share the proof, tell us what standard is being broken. Otherwise, we cannot address the members who are not behaving in a way that aligns with the standards. If you're not sure, file a grievance. We've got a whole committee who looks at it.
Yeah. Okay. Helpful. Okay. Last question. We call it the magic wand. If you had a magic wand and you could change one thing about seeds, what would it be?
Ooh, does it have to be only one? Can I have 3?
No, see, this is how people try to cheat. No, you have one. You have to pick the highest priority in your mind.
I'm going to say it really quietly because I don't want the board to hear it, but I want all my organizational structure in place. I want to just snap my finger and have all of that part of it done so that
Because what do you think is going to happen once it's done?
our leadership team can focus on all of the other things that are important, right? This is the least sexy thing. This is the grocery shopping. This is the doing your laundry. So I'd love that to just be done so that we can be solely focused on the standards and the membership and the advocacy and all of the components of this that make it juicy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is the stuff that has to get done in order to accomplish the big things. Okay. Adrienne, thank you. I'm grateful that we finally got you on here, and I'm grateful for your perspective. And you said it in the beginning. I'll say it again. I'm on a volunteer board. It is so much work, and it's not work that you have to do. You are literally volunteering time and taking time away from your family. So I'm very, very grateful to you and the rest of the Seeds leadership and board for taking this on for the rest of us.
Thank you.
Yes. And for people that want to get in touch with you, they can reach you at.
They can reach me through my website. You can reach me through my email. We can set up a consult. You can find me on Instagram under Surrogacy Queen. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find us on Facebook. I'm on all the socials except TikTok. I don't TikTok.
Okay. We will link all those in the show notes. But again, thank you, Adrienne.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to The Future of Surrogacy. If you liked today's episode, send it to a friend or a colleague that should hear it. And be sure to follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn to keep up with new episodes and behind-the-scenes updates. And if there's a topic you want us to cover or someone you think we should talk to, reach out. We'd love to hear from you. We'll see you next time.